Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. In this video, I want to share a reading that I've done for myself as a VR to Sarah at Waterchild Tarot. Sarah has created a 4-card spread for exploring one's card of the year. And she has a couple of videos that relate to this spread, one kind of detailing it and giving some examples, and another sharing a reading using this spread that she's done for herself for her card of the year for 2022. So I will link those videos below. I'm glad that she's made them because I've really enjoyed doing this reading for myself. I ended up doing this reading on December 31st in lieu of a kind of year ahead spread. I'm interested in working with my card of the year throughout the course of the year, so I thought taking the New Year's Eve time as a time to do a bit of journaling and exploring around what the energy of that card of the year might look like and how I might work with that energy would be a good way of going into the new year. So the card of the year for me this year is the Temperance card. And I have been thinking about the Temperance card and looking at depictions of the Temperance card. And the one that I used to kind of anchor my reading and to think about the card in the context of the year ahead is this depiction from the Slow Holler Tarot, which is called The Alchemist. And this one you can see really emphasizes the blending and intermingling aspects of the Temperance card. I like to read the Temperance card with reference to these meanings, and I had actually looked up to share with you a definition of the word temper, which for me reflects how I think about this card in a lot of ways. And the definition from dictionary.com for the word temper is to bring to a proper, suitable, or desirable state by or as by blending or admixture. So bringing something into a kind of state or alignment that one desires, bringing something into balance if that is what one desires, for example, by blending or combining different elements. And so when I'm reading tarot, I think about the Temperance card in these kinds of terms, a really kind of active bringing together of perhaps disparate capacities or energies or skills or approaches to synthesize and create something new. And these meanings do appeal to me more than the meanings that can go more into the direction of things like moderation or like thinking about like the temperance movement or something like that. Not so much. So thinking about this in terms of alchemy and inner alchemy or spiritual alchemy, and combining aspects of oneself in new ways. I really like what this card brings up in that respect. And something that I liked in the guidebook with respect to this card is that it specifically notes this card coming after the Death card in the Major Arcana, which spoke to me since this past year, 2021, has been a year of the Death card for me. So that trajectory is something I've been thinking of as well. Thinking about the card of the year in the context of a trajectory and not just, on its own or in isolation. So just a couple of sentences, this is not the full description from the guidebook, that it says about the alchemist. It says, notably, the alchemist's invitation comes right after death in the deck, which may have been experienced as a coming apart or paradigm shift. Practicing alchemy can help you reclaim a new sense of wholeness. Don't be afraid to mix and blend understandings, visions, experiences, or other parts of yourself that others tell you simply do not belong together. Resist the human tendency to compartmentalize. Instead, learn to embody the harmony that is possible among fire and water, earth and air. This mixing and blending within yourself should be playful as you realize new insights about your composition. Just be prepared for the challenges too. You likely won't get your internal admixture right the first time. What it takes to achieve balance changes moment to moment. and it goes on from there. So I really, really like that a lot. And my 2022 word of the year that I have chosen, partly informed by the Temperance card, is the word cultivate. So thinking about what I am cultivating and what I desire to cultivate in myself, in my life, in my environment, and thinking about cultivation in that sense of tempering has been an interesting visioning process for me to go through. And so before I get to the spread itself, I'll just share, I've shared once before in another video very briefly, I did make a sigil to go with that. And so this is using a kind of sigil creation method that is inspired by Laura Tempest Zakroff's book, Sigil Witchery. And so see here lots of elements that I've included. A root in love for this kind of plant here. And this is also a raindrop as well as a blossom it has turned out, growing from and fertilizing this seed here. And we have a kind of spirit above or solar current, spirit below or telluric current, and a sun, and a horizon, and roots. And there's some owens here, owen symbols of druidry. So this is my sigil for visioning, cultivation, and tempering for this year. And so my spread. Without further ado, it only took 6.5 minutes of a ramble for me to get to the reading using the spread by Sarah at Waterchild Tarot. So it's a 4-question spread, and it's a tarot spread, but I ended up completing this reading for myself using Ogham instead of tarot. So I found that it worked very nicely in that way. So I will share my findings. So in my reading about the Temperance card, or the Alchemist card, as my card of the year 2022, the first question is, what aspect of the card is most important? And I got Eodad, which is the white poplar, or the quaking aspen. It's the same. So you can see the quaking there of the branch, as the white poplar or quaking aspen really trembles at the tiniest little wind. And so Eodad has to do with messages from the sacred, messages from spirit that can be found in the environment. If one's intuition is open to those messages. And so in terms of an aspect of the Temperance card that is most important, I think that the Temperance card, thinking about it in terms of tempering, in terms of blending disparate elements, there is a sense to the card that then for me is about responsiveness to kind of shifting needs and desires and circumstances. That idea that that blending, that tempering is not about getting to a particular final state and then being done, but rather a kind of ongoing process of becoming, to use a kind of philosophical language. And so I like that this one came up. I also, when I think about Eodad, I think about the ways in which one of the strengths of the white poplar, the quaking aspen, is that it is not rigid. It can move very much in response to shifts in its environment. And I think that the Alchemist, or the Temperance card, also, is a very fluid card, right? So there's an aspect of the card that is most important being one of fluidity, one of openness to changing directions, following one's intuition or one's environment, not getting too rigid in terms of what exactly I am cultivating, but being open to the unexpected, and being open to allowing myself to be changed by things that are shifting around me, and allowing visioning for myself to change in response to things that are shifting around me, by allowing myself to be impacted by my environment and being open to that. And so that is what I get from Eodad, the white poplar, with respect to temperance. The second question in the spread is, how can I apply or engage this energy? And here I think both the energy of the white poplar or Eodad aspects of the energy of temperance or the alchemist. How can I apply or engage this energy throughout the year? And the Ogham that I drew, the Fid that I drew for that is On, which is furze or gorse in the tree Ogham. You can see it there. And this card is an interesting one to come up for how to apply, this energy of the white poplar, because furze and On, among other things, has to do with foundation and strong foundations. And so here I'm thinking about, in terms of how to apply a kind of energy of the Temperance card and that kind of tempering and admixture of things internally in response to the environment without getting too rigid. A foundation is necessary for that, right? And I can't remember whether this is from Kelly Fitzgerald's Ogham class or one of the Ogham books that I read anyway, talked about how, with respect to the foundations that are being pointed to by On, that, a wheel needs a solid ground to roll on, right? A foundation is needed for momentum. A foundation or a good grounding is needed to get momentum, to cultivate motion in a particular direction, and being able to change direction. That needs to happen on a grounding in a context. And so then I'm thinking about, in order for the white poplar, for Eodad to be as responsive to the environment as it is, and to be as flexible and non-rigid as it is, it needs roots as well. So when thinking about how to apply and engage the energy of temperance as a kind of openness and fluidity, and cultivating different elements together, do so, I think, I need to do so with clear motivations. I need to do so with a clear foundation, and a good foundation, maybe some foundational practices that don't change or that have some degree of consistency, because this is not inimical to flexibility. It can be a kind of container for flexibility to happen within. So that is what I got from furze, or On is the name and furze is the plant that it is associated with. The third question in the reading is, what obstacle related to my card of the year is likely to arise? So what obstacle with respect to temperance is likely to arise? And I got Noon, which is ash. And you can see the concentric circles there in this card, with the ash tree there for Noon. And ash has to do with community and connections and interconnectedness, which I think that this concentric circle image here speaks to, relationships and community context. But one of the things that is also associated with this particular Fid is contracts. And so contracts with the people around you, with the organizations around you, whatever it may be. And so in terms of obstacles related to my card of the year, what I start to think about there are kind of concrete obligations and responsibilities that I have in my life that are not necessarily going to change, and have some degree of fixity to them in terms of how much they can change. So while temperance, invites, I think, a lot of openness to reorientation and changing things internally and, mixing things up in new ways, there are things in my social and community and familial context, that involve commitments, right? And those, I think, could be felt as obstacles in certain ways. They don't have to be by definition. I don't think they are by definition at all, but certainly they could feel that way. And I know that for myself, the way that I am thinking about that when I drew this card is that I know, for myself, based on my own past experience, is that when my responsibilities pile up, the kinds of responsibilities that I think Nguyen's association with contracts brings to mind, so that, work deadlines, financial deadlines and cutoffs and things like this, when these kinds of obligations and responsibilities in my life pile up, that is when my spiritual practice can lapse. And it's when I may need to have a spiritual practice the most in terms of centering myself, in terms of shielding myself, balancing myself, that I can let those practices fall by the wayside. And the reason I will say that I let them fall by the wayside is because of these kinds of other responsibilities that aren't going to budge, right? So I start to say, well, I don't have time to keep up my spiritual practice. I don't have the capacity to keep up my spiritual practice, even though that practice builds my capacity. But those practices also take time, right? So I know that I fall into that pattern, and I know that it's not a great pattern, and it's one that I have been working on. The other thing that came up to mind here in terms of an obstacle related to the Temperance card that this could speak to, because Nguyen has to do with the interconnection of all things, makes me think of, as above and so below. I'm wondering if also in terms of obstacles related to my card of the year, that there might not be some challenging astrology in my future this year, and maybe in our collective futures, but in my future. So I'll be exploring into that. I do have some astrology books to work through this year. So I'm wondering if there will be just some external factors coming up, external events, astrological or otherwise, that will be obstacles of the year. So there's a couple of different interpretations of that one for the obstacles. The fourth and final position in the spread is, what is the advice for facing this challenge? So the couple of different challenges that can happen, everyday obligations and responsibility kind of challenges, astrological kind of challenges, external factors throwing me off kind of challenges, as I try to work with this Temperance card. What is the advice for facing those challenges? The fid that I drew for that one is Sal, and Sal is the willow associated with the moon, as the card makes clear, and associated with water, as the card makes clear. And drawing this one, my first thought, in terms of the advice for facing this challenge, was actually a very kind of concrete or literal interpretation, in that I have some willow on my table where I read the cards for myself, and that is my wand is willow. This is Avalon Marsh Willow wand. So with this wand sitting there in front of me when I drew the willow as advice for facing a challenge, I feel like this is a kind of, nudge to remember that, my toolkit at my disposal to help me navigate challenges throughout the year includes, magical skills and divination skills, and willow or Sal of the Om is strongly associated with not only magic but divination in particular, and all things lunar in particular. So when thinking about the challenges posed by Nan or Ash having to do with possibly some challenging astrology, possibly some external factors pushing on me in one way or another, obligations in my life pushing on me in one way or the other. The advice for facing that challenge is to remember all of the tools and the skills that I have to face those kind of challenges, and remember to draw on things like checking in with the moon and working with the moon and working with magic and working with divination and all of these wonderful tools in order to navigate those kind of challenges. And that, I think, is a really nice reference back to the way that Nin as the challenge is making me think of, well, when the external stuff gets tough and demanding, my spiritual practice tends to lapse. I tend to let it fall by the wayside because I feel like I don't have time. And here comes Sal, the fid of divination, magic, and lunar work, saying, no, here's the advice for facing the challenge. So that's my reading for my card of the year 2022, Temperance, or the Alchemist. I really enjoyed this reading so much, so thank you so much, especially to Sarah at Waterchild Tarot for sharing this spread. I have, and I know that Sarah and I, we have the same day planner. So I put my notes from my reading into my day planner there. So I will carry them with me throughout the year. Thank you so much for watching. I don't often share readings that I've done for myself on my channel, but this was really nice to talk through. So I hope that this has been interesting anyway. If you're going to do something with your card of the year, let me know what you're thinking or what your card is if you'd like to share. I will keep an eye out for other VRs as well, and look forward to chatting with you all again. Happy New Year. It's still very new in the year, and I'll see you all again soon.